Hello, welcome and welcome back. This is Jacob and today we are going to be continuing the narration and character voicing for the Rhode Island Records of Originium Rhine Lab manga. And as you can probably already tell by this title card that I'm using right here, that is just slightly different from the previous one. Yes, this manga is now officially being posted in English on the official site of Arknights. So from here on, obviously, I will be using that one for these narrations, and also in the links in the description of the video, you will be able to find the link for the official page. You can also find there the Arknights Kitchen mangas, which are also very good. I did, however, only read recently the very first one, and that is definitely an Arknights story. You can very quickly tell that that is an Arknights story. Plus, it has cooking recipes? That was an interesting discovery. But anyway, I will definitely do one day narrations on those as well on the channel, but first and foremost, we will finish this one that we began, obviously. And also, I will probably, considering now that there is a schedule how they are releasing this on the official site, because not all of it has been released yet, but they are doing it like every couple of days, every week, I don't know. I haven't paid too close attention. As of this recording, when you follow the link, either chapter 3 or chapter 4 should be up, maybe even chapter 5. You'll see when you hit the link. But yeah, going from this video onward, there should be like a roughly week in between each part, so you won't have to wait for too long, because these do take a bit of extra time to work on. Outside of that, all I can say is thank you very much for all the likes on the previous episode, despite that audio issue, and the nice comments as well. So thank you very much. It means a lot. It obviously keeps the video relevant in the algorithm. So if by the end of this video you like what you hear and see, consider leaving a like again, maybe a comment, maybe even if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. It would be nice to get the channel to that beautiful 1000 eventually, to, you know, get it monetized as well. But outside of that, let us get into our story today. So, this is chapter 2, and we are gonna be picking off right where we left off. As a quick little recap of what happened at the end of the previous manga, well, two things majorly happened. One was that Daria remembered a tragic memory from her past, as her mother, who was shielding her from her father, was assaulted with a broken bottle, essentially. And as Daria got shaken by that memory, she attacked the very first person in front of her, which was Saria, later collapsed from exhaustion and high fever and temperature, being immediately carried away by Silence and Pelopsis into the emergency room, Ifrit in pursuit. And as they prepared to treat immediately Daria there, we transitioned the scene to a very similar scene in the past at Rhine Lab, where Saria ran to the emergency room with an injured Ifrit calling for emergency help. And that is pretty much where we're gonna pick off this time, in the past, where we left off last time. So, let us proceed, shall we? We see the scene play out where we left off, as Saria is rushing in, followed by two of her defense compatriots, and we hear still over the speakers, "Prepare for emergency treatment. All staff on shift to recess 1, please." As the staff keeps rushing in, we see the first three scientists that are on duty approach and saying in between each other, "Director Saria? Yeah, it's her. Director Saria's here." Saria calls out to them, "Wounded personnel requesting emergency aid." But as the man in front immediately notices the dark crystal shards on Ifrit's hand, and immediately halts the group behind him with a, "Careful, it's an infected." As everybody pretty much just stands still, Silence pushes through the crowd. "Make way, please. Give her to me," as she rushes forward, extending her hands to take Ifrit off of Saria's hands, gently embracing her. And as Saria just looks at Silence, saying, It's up to you. And we transition to our title card for this episode. And as Saria keeps on saying in the background, you have to save her. And we see Episode 2, Experimental Treatment, Rhode Island, Records of Originium, Rhine Lab. And as we see the treatment taking place immediately right after that scene, Philopsis and Silence inside with a bunch of extra personnel from the lab treating Ifrit. And as they proceed, Joyce, monitor BP and pulse, draw blood and test circulatory Originium. Affirmative. Increase cardiotonic by 0.25 milliliters. Prep the blockers. Understood. And as everybody's in a hurry, machines keep beeping in the background, monitors keeping track of Ifrit's vitals. We transition to some moments later as someone enters the very emergency room where we see Silence overlooking Ifrit, who is on a oxygen machine, and a young scientist taking notes right on the other side of the bed. We see a close-up of Ifrit, and as the man who just entered the scene says from the background, "Researcher Silence." "Professor?" "If I might borrow you for a moment." Of course, and we get treated to the Rhine Lab Director of Structural, Parvis. The two of them leave the room. Silence notices the person to her right standing there, which is none other than Saria, still standing and waiting for the two of them to exit the room and hear how the procedure went. She nods at the two, and Parvis continues. "There's someone I'd like you to meet." Silence just thinks to herself, it really is Director Saria, as it is only now slowly sinking into her that the person who ran at her earlier was indeed Saria. Parvis continues, "Director Saria, Researcher Silence, who took it upon herself to save our wounded. Silence, this is Director of Defense, Saria." "Hello, Researcher Silence. Good work." It's an honor, Director Saria, to finally meet you. Tell me, how the patient's doing?" "She underwent an acute attack, typical of mid to late stage uropathy. Her vital signs are now stable, following resuscitation. But the outlook is pessimistic at best. Blood originium crystal density measures 0.45 units per liter. Substantial surface crystallization on the body plus emergency symptoms of originium mutation. Blood tests indicate she's biologically Savra, but she's growing Sarcas horns and her tail has morphed too. We've stabilized her vitals, but Ifrit's life is still in danger. She remains in critical condition." "I see." Ifrit being... And she utters that phrase because obviously Saria was not aware of that name, or rather didn't think of that name as the name for the girl. But Silence addresses that with, "I registered her under that name for now. I saw it on a tag." Pretty much the origin of Ifrit's name going forward. Saria just acknowledges it with a "fine. I'll fill you in on her background then." And then as we transition the scene to a couple of hours earlier, 5 hours ago, there was an explosion at a lab just outside Three Mounts. What caused the accident is still under investigation. Three Mounts City Hall Special Services asked Defense to undertake a rescue mission. However, Ifrit was the only survivor we found. And also, I would just like to point out here, on the Dorothy narrations that I did on the channel, I think I made a comment, and there was a comment as well on the final episode from a viewer, and we both agree that Rhine Lab Rhine Lab and Umbrella Corporation have a lot in common. Let's not kid ourselves, they have a lot in common. And then here, right here, that guy with the sunglasses, you cannot tell me that that is not Wesker. You cannot tell me that that guy has not been made as an Easter egg to be like, hey, look, it's Wesker. And also, noticing that and knowing Wesker, the only thing I can hear from that guy right now is Chris. Anyway, Saria continues. And as a witness to the accident, we believe she'll be of assistance. Right, we'll do what we can. But given Ifrit's present condition, I'm afraid... And as she's unable to finish that sentence, all three of them fall silent, but Parvis thinks to himself for a moment. There is a way, but it carries a certain degree of risk. We can attempt the Chimera treatment. And as both of them hear that and immediately react to the name, Saria says, I've heard of it. A few nations have labs researching similar theoretical treatments. Indeed. It's a groundbreaking line of therapy. And as he finishes that sentence, the two of them just fall silent again, thinking about it. Parvis continues, we surgically implant treated Originium shards into lesions, and then administer a costume formulation. The implanted shards are excited to a certain level of activity, which draws in surrounding Originium from the patient's internal lesions. This constrains the Originium's spread, alleviating neuropathy. Also, I love how this entire explanation of how this works is essentially plant in our own treated Originium and it will attract the Originium from the blood to itself. It also sounds like the very same thing that Iron Man did. Again, another parallel. But continuing. Professor, the Chimera treatment isn't ready. It hasn't even entered phase 1 clinical trials. Wouldn't performing it on this patient be far too risky? It certainly would. But the situation being what it is, she won't last into next week, let alone help any investigation. Better we give it a shot than watch her die. Plus, there is precedent for experimental treatment in an emergency, and I'll be the one reporting up the chain. Saria just agrees to this with an, alright, I agree with Director Parvis. Well then. Silence, I'm appointing you as my assistant. You'll call the shots on how the treatments run. I'll arrange for Joyce to help you out. Director Saria, I can vouch that Silence and Joyce are outstanding researchers. They'll certainly... And as he is unable to finish that sentence fully, they all hear a ear-piercing yowl from the background. Terrifying. And all react immediately. Saria rushing into the room, followed by Silence. And as she enters the room, she immediately hears the young researcher inside just... It's okay. It's okay. Calm down. You're alright. I'm staying here. Just put that down. And as we see a frightened Ifrit just cowering in a corner with a surgical knife pointing at the young man in front of her, all panicked and scared. And as she still, even if he is not approaching her, still lashes forward and scaring him. Silence and Saria approach. Silence immediately to Saria. Director Saria, the patient's extremely frail. Please, try not to provoke her. Understood. And she just steps in front of Ifrit, hands up in the air, signaling, I am no threat to you, and asks for her by name, Ifrit. Ifrit looking up, slightly recognizing who is talking to her, as she is probably recalling the memory of her being rescued by this very same person. Saria continues, "My name is Saria. Do you remember me? I'm not going to hurt you." And as Ifrit is still slightly, still scared of what is happening and confused, everybody else just keeps looking on to what is gonna transpire. Saria reaches out her hand to take the knife, saying, "Hand me the knife, okay?" And she's slowly taking it out of her hand, everybody just waiting in the background with bated breath. She does acquire the knife eventually and takes it back. The young scientist, all relieved, suddenly approaches Ifrit with, "I think we're good now." But the moment he approaches, Ifrit immediately reacts again and starts cowering back into her corner and yelling out in pretty much what would be probably more considered a painful shriek. Saria immediately reprimanding the young man, "Stay back, don't come closer." Okay. Silence beginning to immediately analyze what is happening and why she would suddenly react, but not to him, but to Saria, thinking, how can Saria approach Ifrit without agitating her while we... As she looks at Saria, she looks at the young man, and suddenly a thought enters her head. Is it a lab coat? Immediately upon that thought, she takes off her coat, does the same thing that Saria did by lifting her hands up and slowly approaching Ifrit, kneeling down, slowly going in closer, just calling out to her, "Ifrit?" Gently taking her hands into her own, Ifrit being still confused and shocked, but slightly calmer now. Saria just gently smiling back at her, and she's closely, ever so slowly, embracing Ifrit into a nice warm hug, saying, "It's okay, you're fine, nobody's going to hurt you." And as Ifrit slowly starts to relax, closes her eyes, and falls asleep. Saria sees the scene play out and just asks, "How is she?" "She's alright. Just sleeping. She's too weak." And as we then proceed to pretty much immediately prepare Ifrit for, or rather sometime later, prepare Ifrit for the operation, she's back on the table. Silence slowly putting herself under all the medical gear possible that you need, being handed the very same shard that was talked about earlier, the treated one from Parvis. We see a close-up of the little thingy. How ironic is that? Treating Oripathy with more Oripathy? Well, it's not technically Oripathy, but still. Treating an Originium infection with an Originium infection. I mean, it's not unheard of. It's obviously a medical thing, but boy oh boy, it's ironic. Anyway, as everybody prepares for the operation, Parvis unlocking from the outside, and Silence begins the operation with a commencing Chimera operation. And then we proceed to 1 week later, the Rhine Structural Section Laboratory. As we hear a commotion, Ifrit, stay still, just take this and you'll be done. As a little Ifrit is very angrily hissing and throwing pillows at the young research assistant there. We see Saria enter the lab section while we overhear a conversation going. Silence, Joyce. I can't calm her down. I need you after all. Hand me her medicine. And as Saria comes in and asks them all, what's going on? Ah! Hello, Researcher Silence, Researcher Moore. Director Saria, good afternoon. And as she enters and is being greeted back, the other three researchers that don't really interact with anybody, so far at least, are just in the background, all observing as to who just entered their research ward. But Saria continues. I thought I'd come and see how the patient was doing. And she looks at Ifrit, all, well, energetic would be a word, throwing pillows. She seems much better. Indeed, the Chimera treatment was effective. Ifrit's condition has improved, but... And as we get treated by a scene of Ifrit just angrily looking away, as the young researcher just peeks if the coast is clear, just to take out the trash. But Ifrit reacts and hisses back at him immediately, spooking him, but also producing small little flames around her hands now. Saria noticing that immediately and asking, is that arts? As we hear from the inside, just taking out the trash cans. Stay there, stay. Aww. That poor guy. Anyway, as Tilopsis responds to the question. Affirmative. Ifrit possesses Originium arts that allow her to cast flames. Silence continues. When stressed, she uses them to scare people. Regular post-procedure injections of costume formula are needed to excite her shards, but she seems to be violently wary of and hostile to almost everyone. Help me! Hence the difficulty our researchers have administering her doses. Ifrit, stop it! Using arts is bad for your health. She seems to only allow Joyce and I near her, so we've had to conduct the majority of in-person treatment ourselves. Saria responds. What's the cause? It's likely psychological. As she looks onto the pills that need to be given to Ifrit for her treatment, and continues. Ifrit has been in pain for a long time due to the effects of horopathy, which has led to an irascible temper and a deprivation of comfort. She needs to rely on analgesics. But her injections of the formula cause pain in her lesions regardless, and said pain is beyond analgesics to suppress. This is why she resists injections and feels consistently terrible post-treatment. Pretty sad scene, but understandable regardless. As for the psychological aspect, we can only guess, but we surmise that past trauma has left her with a stress disorder. We estimate her mental age to be lagging behind her physical one by roughly 4 to 6 years. As Saria thinks to herself for a moment and says, I have some questions relating to the investigation. Can I ask her now? I'm afraid she may not be able to answer. Ifrit hasn't spoken a word up until this point. It's unclear if her language is impaired or if she's just unwilling to talk. As Silence says that, both of the two of them just think again. And Silence continues. But I do recall you being the first person she showed no hostility to. Perhaps you could try. And then we continue with the two of them entering the room. Silence first, calling out to Ifrit. Ifrit? Ifrit just, with a very sad expression, just looking up to Silence as she's entering the room. Silence with a slight smile on her face, saying, It's me. Director Saria is here to see you. You've met her before, do you remember? And as Ifrit sees her, immediately, excitedly reacts to Saria's presence there. Saria looks down towards her and says, Ifrit? With a slight pause, by the way, after Ifrit. Hello. And as Ifrit just looks up to her, Silence looks at Saria. Saria holding the cup with the medicine. And then we get treated with the first JoJo reference in this chapter. As Saria, full determination and are you approaching me moment, steps towards Ifrit, cup in hand with medicine, and the two researchers outside just freak the hell out when they see that. It immediately react with, any bad kid would think Director Saria was about to punish them. Still, doesn't she seem a little, stiff? Is she maybe just not, good with, children? Ifrit just looking up at Saria. And Saria straight up telling her, take your medicine, Ifrit. Ifrit just wide-eyed looking back. Silence just with an expression of, oh boy, this is gonna go well. The two researchers outside also in the same kind of mood of, oh boy. Ifrit proceeds to look at the cup, looks at Saria, and it, with a very determined, looks the hell away and gives her the cold shoulder. Shocking Saria, not shocking everybody else, but everybody else face palms, but Silence almost bursts out in laughter over there. I love that face. But obviously everybody collectively just, no duh, how was that gonna do it? Silence whispering to Saria, Director Saria, realistically she's only a child of 8 or 9. You have to coax her into it. And upon hearing that, Saria being a bit perplexed as to, coax? Yeah. And as she very, very profoundly and heavily thinks about how do you coax a child to take her medicine? Ifrit, take your medicine and then it won't hurt. As the two outside just go, Director Saria, for the 1000th time, there's no universe where that work. But Ifrit proceeds to look up at Saria with a look of, are you telling me the truth? Takes the cup, takes the medicine, to the surprise of the two researchers outside. She took it. That's Director Saria for you, I guess? Silence also relieved, hands her a cup of water. Take a drink of water, quick. Ifrit proceeds to gulp it down immediately and receives a nice warm head pat from Silence with a well done. Saria and Silence just look at each other with a smile of and relieved. And Silence looks at Ifrit and says, Ifrit, Director Saria wants to talk to you. Ifrit nods. Silence proceeds to leave and tells Saria, I'll be waiting outside. Call for me if you need anything. Oh, good. As we proceed to the scene outside, how is it going? Director Saria is trying a few investigation-related questions with Ifrit. But she won't even talk to you. How could Saria, of all people, manage? Yeah, like, she's Saria. I'm starting to worry about Ifrit. Silence asks back, what do you mean? What's wrong with Director Saria? She seems nice enough. As they immediately go into a, nice enough? You're the cookie one here, Silence. Haven't you heard the stories? Huh? What stories? And as we get treated with JoJo reference number 2, if you ever in your life thought that JoJo Saria is not real and JoJo Saria cannot hurt you, Arknights would like to have a word with you. I cannot look at that face. I can't look at that face. Anyway, Director Saria is the strictest and steeliest in all of Rhine. Never mind your average researcher. Even the directors are hesitant to meet with her. That's fear. It doesn't matter if it's a defense or any other section. If she catches anything she doesn't like, you're in for a lecture. And as we see a mental scene being played out as Saria just berates you. They knew what they were doing there. Repeat to me what you just said. Do you not realize what you've done? Here's my confession. You gotta apologize, repent, and hand her a corrective plan on the spot. You don't give her a plan, she'll haul you into your boss for questioning. Boss, it's my fault, director. I love that in this version, even the boss is startled by Saria just busting through the door with an employee in tears. Anyway, as Silence starts to realize, or rather, how do you put it? As she, realizes what is being told to her, with an and you keep talking until our plan gets hashed out. I love Pelopsis just in the background. She's just in the background with a cup, totally mood, just doesn't give up. Like, what are they even talking about? Kind of situation. But Silence responds with a very straight up expression and answer of, but isn't that how it should be? Pelopsis on that answer, just looking away, taking a sip. The two scientists just shocked by the answer, and immediately proceed to audibly whisper between each other. Oh wow, did she ask for more homework too? No, I'm just saying her ways make sense, right? Yeah, obviously that's not the scary part. If you have the courage to talk back to her, see? Then you're in for more than a lecture. And as we proceed now to the Food Force reference of this manga, by the way, good anime, you should watch it. If you love food and battle shonen animes, give it a shot. If you haven't already. Good shit. Pro tip, never watch it on an empty stomach. That is not a good idea. Anyway. She dismantles your conduct, dissects your soul, and rebirths you. Every shortcoming in your personality, rationality deconstructed, laid bare in the light of the midday sun, nowhere to hide. So bright. That's definitely something. Some new hires went through it and resigned in tears. Some spent months in therapy. How do you know? No, don't ask. Don't! Isn't what he's talking about just him? Backstory. This man has backstory. I love that sentence. This random character, he has backstory. Quick, write it down. It's just a horror story amongst us researchers. I hear Director Saria was doing some defense op drills, and these lippy guys talked about testing her courage with a fight. You that Saria, broad. Drop the gloves and be my girl. Offers closing. Uh-huh. And what happened to them? Physically pulverized, beaten, and broken. The guys who told me the story wouldn't even describe it. I just love the three muscle bros in the background just crying their eyes out over a drink. Oh boy, she pulverized them. And we get greeted with, I'm just gonna guess. I'm just gonna blindly guess because I cannot figure out if this is a Hajime no Ippo reference or not, because I haven't read the manga, but it kind of gives me the vibe for some reason. But it gives me the vibe, and then the eyes and mouth just feel like they saw Goblin Slayer and went like, yeah, I want that. But anyway, ever since, every defense op has been obedient to Director Saria on a molecular level. And so legend has it that she's made of diamond from heart to fist. Harder, hardest. Unbreakable. And as we get greeted with yet another depiction of Saria, which I'm just gonna guess it's probably some random anime style that I've not seen, but what it reminds me of, personally, this is gonna make me sound old. Who remembers Oban Star Racer? Sound off in the comments if you remember that one. Anyway, Silence a bit freaked out over that response with, "We've taken this a little too far now. You see how Ifrit seems willing to listen to her, though. Perhaps..." And she's not able to finish the sentence. A loud scream can be heard from the room where Ifrit is inside, from Ifrit herself. And as the panic begins, "What's going on?" "That's Ifrit." Researcher Silence. "Director Saria." And as Silence rushes in, we see Ifrit just screaming her soul out over something. And as Silence asks, "What's happening? What's going on?" And as Ifrit just keeps on screaming, Silence just embraces her into a hug very quickly. "Ifrit, it's okay, it's okay. It'll be fine. What did you do, Director Saria?" And Saria is unable to, at that moment, describe what just happened. We proceed to a scene a few moments later outside of Ifrit's room as they both look in, as Ifrit is now just soundly asleep. And Saria says, a bit worried, the first few questions she could answer by nodding or shaking. But the moment I mentioned... So then, the lab you were in was called Hayden 1 Laboratory, correct? And the moment Ifrit heard that name, Hayden 1, she started to immediately heavily breathe. Her hands started to shake, and slowly, ever so slowly, a scream started to form ever louder until she just started to yell. I apologize, Researcher Silence. I was too hasty with my question. No, I failed to account for it. It seems Ifrit's stress disorder is more severe than we thought. It would be best not to have her recall past events for the time being. Of course. I'll leave Ifrit's continued treatment in your hands, then. It's a tall order. No, I'm doing what must be done. Besides, what is it? Ifrit seems especially fond of you, judging by her reaction today. Perhaps she has more vague memories of you rescuing her, so if you could visit her more often, she might end up making a faster recovery. And as we see as she's asking that question for Ifrit's sake, you can also tell that the way she is just crouching her own lab coat down there, she's also asking because, as it is very obvious, she is a Saria fan herself, so she would also probably like to have her around. And as she immediately realizes what she's asking of her, immediately goes into an apologetic mode of, "Oh, I know you must be swamped with work, obviously. It was insensitive of me to ask." But Saria just thinks about what was asked of her and responds immediately with a "fine." But Silence, not noticing that response, continues, If you're too busy, that's perfectly... huh? You'll do it?" "Yes. I'll find time to come and see her." "But, isn't it too much if this affects your work?" "Don't worry. Getting Ifrit to recover ASAP is part of my work." And as she hears that, Silence just happily smiles, ever so brightly. "Thank you very much." And as to respond to that, Telopsis. Telopsis from the background just goes, Researcher Silence, startling silence immediately, as is obvious, and continues, Subsequent treatment procedure requires your operational authority. Researcher Moore requests your assistance. Yes, I'll be right with you. Director Saria, you'll have to excuse me. Alright, I'll leave you to it. Also, I would like to say that going from the expression, obviously Topsis doesn't have many expressions on her face, but this is a manga after all, so going from the expression and the way she words stuff, stop fangirling over there, get back over here. Anyway, we proceed to see several scenes play out over several days now, in which Saria keeps dropping by Ifrit's room, Ifrit receiving her shots, the researchers talking. Director Saria's here, really? You're incredible, Silence. Who knew you could convince her? I'm nothing special, she's just a good person. As the other three researchers in the same wing are just by themselves and far, far away from the group, potentially mumbling over there, who the hell knows what they are doing. We keep seeing more scenes play out of Saria keeping on visiting Ifrit, even reading her a book, from what it looks like. Ifrit not wanting to let Saria go, holding on to her sleeve. To another day where Saria is bringing her medicine and a cup of water. Ifrit taking her meds. And then another day where Saria again comes back to visit. But this time, oh my god! Sorry. It's casual mode! Sorry. It's casual mode Saria. Ifrit sees Saria entering the room. They lock eyes. And I would... By the way, full confession, I was very tempted to just jokingly put a speech bubble there over Ifrit for this one. Just saying, that skin, when in game, please? Anyway. Saria asking Ifrit, who tied your hair? As Ifrit points to the window, and on the other side of the window we see Silence and Parvis overlooking the data that they are getting from Ifrit, and obviously she's pointing towards Silence. Silence outside continues to talk to Parvis. Professor, there's visible signs of absorption here. Very good. Wonderfully well done, Silence. And as they're both pleased by what they are seeing, we see Ifrit onlooking as the two of them talk outside, and we now transition back to the present, to the Rhode Island treatment ward, where a Ifrit is sleeping on someone's bed, that someone poking her in the cheek, calling out to her with, "Boss." Ifrit waking up, all murmurly, seeing Daria awake, just exclaiming, "Daria! You're up, finally!" And as she immediately proceeds to glump her, "Hell yeah! You scared me to death, you dumbass!" And she just keeps pinching those cheeks like mochi. Silence enters the room immediately. Also, I love the fact that the moment she jumps for a hug into Daria's expression is just like, I should have let her sleep. Anyway, Silence enters the room. Ifrit, she only just recovered. Don't make trouble. Silence. Daria, this is Silence. She's the one who made you better. You ought to thank her now. And as Daria looks up at Silence and just says, "Thank you." And we see a very gentle smile, very fluffily gentle smile, let's put it that way, from Silence upon hearing that. But at the very next moment, Ifrit, full boasting there, standing in front of Silence, goes, "I knew it. She cured me once, there's no way she couldn't cure you." Meanwhile, Silence looking onto this very cheeky child. But that very same cheeky child returns a very cheeky smile towards Silence with, "Right, Silence? Of course. and she gives Ifrit a nice little headbat. Continuing, Ifrit, Daria will need continued treatment for her sickness. You said you were her boss, correct? Yep. Then I hope you're up to the task. Take good care of her. You can take her around when she's free, but be sure she doesn't miss treatment, okay? Relax, you can count on me. And upon that, Silence leaves the room slowly, as the two of them in the background keep on talking and chatting. As she leaves the room, she immediately puts on a more serious expression, faces her team, and asks, "How are Daria's test results?" The team looking back. Tilops is handing her the papers with the data. Designated individual, Daria. Abnormally elevated body temperature, largely impervious to therapy. Rapid imaging tests show indistinct outlines of individuals' internal organs, obscured by numerous abnormal shadows. Blood Originium crystal density measures 0.68 units per liter. Also, I didn't say it earlier when they were saying Ifrit's units per liter, but I usually say this in my file series here and there for the operators here on the channel. Anything above 0.3 is... yeah, that's danger territory already. Very big danger territory to the individual. Ifrit earlier had 0.45. Daria here has basically 0.7 almost. That is insane. Anyway, the meeker of the two research assistants hearing that bad? It's not unanticipated. Some of her indicators are worse than Ifrit's were back then. It's hard to imagine how she even made it. Given she's unimpeded in activity despite a scalding high temperature, there can only be one explanation. She's long since become accustomed to temperature that high. And the other assistant just says, "I see. That explains why she likes dousing herself in water to cool down." Vitals indicate Daria is in acute condition and suffers from late-stage neuropathy. Her life has been saved, but her condition could deteriorate at any time. Dr. Silence, your proposed treatment... Collapses. I want you to help me gather some data. What data do you require? I need you to look into background, Daria's circumstances, household conditions, history of illness, etc. These will help determine her treatment plan. But you'd have to return to the port Daria boarded at to investigate. You'll need to head into the field. But as Tilopsis immediately goes to the terminal next to her, please wait. Database holds sufficient information to satisfy your search query. Following area your search results. I'm just noticing this. This doesn't make sense. Whatever. Following area your search results. Even an official translation can sound dumb. Individual, Daria, 4 years old. Main household income sourced from cropping, meager. Mother is an infected. Individual was infected via antepartum transmission. Individual was an infected at birth and never received the norm of treatment. Basically that word that she just said there is at childbirth, essentially. Or pre-childbirth, if I'm correct. So yeah, she was born infected. So it was an antepartum infection. That explains why such a young child would be so acutely afflicted. Individual is aware of own Originium arts, able to control water. This ability is extremely rare and dangerous. In light of individual's infancy and lack of self-control, monitoring is advised. As the more calm and collected assistant is just thinking over what she just heard, the other one asks, "Huh? Dangerous? What did she even do? Bust some pipes? Mess up the plumbing? And as she immediately gets smacked over her head for that, numbskull. It's not just pipes, don't forget, your body is 70% water. And upon hearing and remembering that statement, immediately realizing what this could mean. Further, Daria's father had severe alcoholic and violent tendencies and abused Daria's mother over a long period during inebriation. Accounts from neighbors in inquiry reports state, the screams came through the wall every day. That's the way it was. And as we proceed back to people relaying what they heard. He went too far, but we were all petrified of him. So many times Daria's mother was beaten to within an inch of her life. He just kept drinking and getting violent. And as we also get treated to even more scenes of violence in the family. You gave birth to this monster, you useless piece of shit. I'm sorry. It was like that for years. A hair trigger was all that was needed when he was drunk. We were all used to it. But that night, that shriek, it was horrifying. And as we see more of the scene that we saw in chapter 1, blood splattering over Daria's face, and the shriek that she keeps describing. We then proceed to see the young pair, approach the door of their neighbors. We went out, huddled in our sheets, so worried about what happened. Who could have known? Antoine, are you alright? We heard a loud noise. Why can't you ever talk things out? You'll save us all the commotion and as both of them are immediately stopped in their track upon seeing this very scene in front of them. A young girl standing in between her dead two parents. And as we've definitely seen it happen already. Her mother was essentially hit by the broken bottle, and it looks like she pretty much either died through the impact or through bleeding out there on the floor. While it definitely looks like her father got drained of all the liquids in his body. Because even though it's not colored, I'm just gonna pretty much presume here that the liquid that is flowing around little Daria there is not water. That is not a clear substance. That is more than likely blood. Ooh. But we continue back with Tolopsis reading through the statement. It was the most frightening scene we ever saw. End report. And that is pretty much where we are gonna end for today. Yep, this is how it ended for her family apparently, at least from what we can gather from the statements and this very, very scene here. The mother died, bludgeoned to death basically, by her very own husband, while Daria freaked out over what happened and on impulse just killed her own father. While I'm not sorry for the father, that guy was an asshole. Oh boy, that is a 4-year-old. Oof. But anyway, this will be it for today's episode. Next time we will be continuing with chapter 3, which should be out probably in a week from now, roughly. But yeah, hopefully in post when I start adding in music to this, it won't break again, please. But in the meantime, if you liked this video, please leave a like. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. There is much more narrated content on the channel than just this, if you just take a look. And obviously, considering this almost a side story, this story ties into the just recently released Dorothy's Vision side story in Arknights. The narration on that one is already done. If you haven't heard that story yet, link to the narration will be on screen in a moment and in the description of the video, obviously. But in the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic day wherever you are, and I will see you in the next part. Until then, bye bye.